Welcome to Everything Computerized. I am CA, and in this video I am going to show you how to install an operating system on VirtualBox. I am going to show you the steps with Ubuntu, one of the most popular distros of Linux operating system, but you can watch this video even if you want to install some other operating system because these steps are almost the same. So watch this video till end and let's get started. Before moving forward with this video, you should know what architecture your computer is running on, whether it is a 64-bit system or a 32-bit system. If you know about these, you can skip this part. But if you don't know about these, then you can watch the previous video where I have shown you how to install VirtualBox. There I had explained about 32-bit and 64-bit architectures in detail, so you'll not face any difficulty about these terms. But for now, I'll just show you how you can check for the type of architecture you have. So open this PC if you are on Windows 8 or Windows 10, and my computer if you are on Windows 7 or lower. Now right click on the blank side and click on Properties. Under System, you'll get a note of the amount of RAM you have, the processor model, and your system architecture. You just need to make sure that you have at least 4 GB of RAM if you want to use VirtualBox, as it's the minimum requirement you need to have. If you have more than 4 GB of RAM, then it's good, but if you have less than that, then you'll face some difficulties while using VirtualBox. Also take a note of the bit of your computer. You should check the bit of your operating system. You can see that it's mentioned here 64-bit operating system x64 based processor. You need to check just the operating system bit, not your processor bit. So in my case, I have a 64-bit computer. Some of you might have 32-bit operating system x64 based processor. This means that you have a 64-bit processor, but the operating system you are having is a 32-bit one. So you'll consider it as 32-bit only. I think this is enough information you need to know beforehand. So we know the bit of our operating system and the amount of RAM we have. Now let's move on to the main purpose of this video. So we are going to create a virtual machine on VirtualBox, that is, we are going to install an operating system on VirtualBox. I am going to show you the steps with Ubuntu, that is the most popular distro of Linux, and if you want to install some other operating system of your choice, then also you can watch this video because most of the steps are same and much of the work is done by VirtualBox automatically, so you don't need to worry about anything. So the very first thing that you need to have is the operating system itself. So you need to have with you the operating system that you want to install. It is a disk image file, a very large file that ends in .iso extension. As I want to install Ubuntu, I have the disk image file of Ubuntu operating system. And if you want to install Windows, you'll be having the disk image file of Windows. And if you want to install Mac OS, you will be having the disk image file of Mac OS itself. So you need to have the disk image file of the operating system that you wish to install. These disk image files are available for download over the internet, so you can download the operating system of your choice. I'll give the link of Ubuntu in the description box. You can go there and you can download Ubuntu disk image file from there. One very important thing that you need to make sure while downloading an ISO is that if you are running a 32-bit computer, then you can install only 32-bit version of operating system. So you need to download only 32-bit ISOs. But if you are running a 64-bit computer, then you can install a 64-bit ISO and also a 32-bit ISO on VirtualBox. So you need to make sure that you keep this thing in your mind while you are downloading an ISO for yourself. As I have a 64-bit computer, I have downloaded the 64-bit version of Ubuntu. But if you have a 32-bit computer, then you need to download a 32-bit version of any operating system. as you cannot run 64-bit on a 32-bit computer. So I have my ISO present at my downloads folder, and you need to make a note where you have your ISO present in your case. So open VirtualBox as administrator and you'll have VirtualBox Manager in front of you. Now click on New and then you'll have this small window in front of you. Here you have to input all the basic details of the virtual machine that you're going to install. So first you need to input the name of the virtual machine. So as I'm going to install Ubuntu 64-bit, I'll name it as Ubuntu 64-bit. You can name it anything, but it's better to write the name of the exact operating system that you are going to install. So I am going to name it as Ubuntu 64-bit. Now in the machine folder, you need to choose the folder where all the files of your virtual machine will be stored. By default, it stores all the files in C drive, but you need to choose the drive, or you need to choose the folder where you have much of the empty space left. If you have large amount of empty space present on your C drive, then you can leave everything as it is. But if you want to change the default folder, then you can click on this arrow button and click on Other. Now a file dialog will open. Now you have to choose the folder where you want to store your virtual machine. So I'll click on this PC and you can see that I have more than 200 GB left in my G drive. So I'll store my virtual machine in G drive. So double clicking on it, I'll create a new folder here and I'll rename it as VirtualBox, and then double click on the new folder that we have created, and now click on select folder. Now our virtual machine will get stored on G drive, and as we have more than 200 GB left, so we will not face any problem regarding storage. Now in the type, you need to choose the type of operating system you have to install. So if you are installing Windows, then you need to choose Microsoft Windows. If you are installing any distro of Linux, then you need to choose Linux, and likewise others. So as I am going to install Linux, I'll choose Linux. You might have noticed that when I entered the name of my virtual machine, VirtualBox automatically set the type of my virtual machine to Linux and my version to Ubuntu 64-bit. This is why we need to give a name that exactly defines what our operating system is. So if you give a correct name, then VirtualBox will do much of the things itself and you don't need to worry about anything going wrong. So always try to give a meaningful name to your virtual machine that has the name of the operating system you want to install and the architecture of that operating system. In the version, you need to choose the version of the operating system. So depending upon the type of your operating system, the version is set. So as I am going to install Linux, so in version there are present all of the types of Linux that you may have to install. So I want to install Ubuntu, which is 64-bit, so I'll choose Ubuntu 64-bit. If you don't know what version and what type of operating system you have, you can just give a meaningful name to your virtual machine and VirtualBox will set them automatically according to your needs, and you don't have to worry about anything. Now when you have done these things, click on Next, and now you have to choose the amount of memory you want to give to your virtual machine, that is the amount of RAM your virtual machine will have. You can see that there is a green zone and a red zone here. It means that you can assign any amount of RAM in the green zone and your computer will not face any stability issues and your virtual machine will work flawlessly. But if you choose a RAM amount in the red zone, then what will happen is there will be very less amount of RAM left for your main computer, and so your main computer will face stability issues while running VirtualBox. So always try to choose RAM which is in the green zone. So I'll choose 4 GB of RAM for my virtual machine, that is around 4096 megabytes. You can calculate the amount of megabytes from the number of GB by multiplying 1024 with the amount of GB you want. So as I want 4 GB of RAM, so I'll multiply 1024 with 4 and I get 4096 megabytes. Before installing your virtual machine, it's better that you gather some information about the operating system that you are installing. That is, if you are installing Windows, then what is the minimum RAM that Windows will require in order to run correctly. And as I am installing Ubuntu 64-bit, so Ubuntu 64-bit requires minimum of 4 GB of RAM to run correctly. So I am assigning it 4 GB of RAM, and in your case you need to check out the minimum RAM required by the operating system that you are going to install. But if you don't know what these all things are, you can just leave the default value set by VirtualBox and you can proceed with the other steps. And if you think you need more RAM for your virtual machine, you can just go to the virtual machine settings and then you can alter the amount of RAM for your virtual machine afterwards. So after you have decided the amount of RAM for your virtual machine, click on next, and now you will be asked to set up the hard disk. So there are three options to not add a virtual hard disk: create a virtual hard disk now and use an existing virtual hard disk file. So I'll go with the second option, that is create a virtual hard disk now. So click on create, and now you'll need to choose the hard disk file type. So I'll choose VHT, that is virtual hard disk. Now click on next, and now you need to choose dynamically allocated and then click on next, and now you need to choose the size of the hard disk you want. So here you can set up the hard disk depending upon your choice. As you can recall that we were going to install the hard disk in the disk drive which had the largest storage space left. So I had more than 200 GB of free storage in my hard disk. So I'll choose 40 GB for my virtual machine. You can choose as much as you want, but there is a minimum requirement that you need to have, because every operating system has a minimum amount of storage that it has to get so that it can work correctly and it can store its own files there. So as Ubuntu is a very light operating system, it requires minimum of 20 GB, and if you assign more than that, then it's well and good. But if you are low on storage, then you can assign around 20 GB and it will get your work done. So I'll going to assign 40 GB in my case, and then you need to click on create. It's better that you gather some system requirement information about the operating system that you're going to install, because this will help you set up the correct RAM amount and the correct hard disk amount for your operating system and get most out of the virtual machine. We have successfully created the hardware for our operating system. Now what we have to do is to install the operating system onto this hardware. So for that, right click on the virtual machine that we just created and click on settings. Now click on storage, and now here we need to create a new optical disk drive to install our operating system onto the virtual machine. So for that, click on this icon and then click on optical drive, and now here we need to choose the disk image file of the operating system that we want to install. So we are going to add a new disk image file of the operating system. So click on add, and now you need to browse to the folder where you have your ISO present, and then choose that ISO that you want to install and click on open. Now that ISO will be added to this list. Now you need to choose that ISO and then click on choose button. You'll notice that a new device has been added below controller IDE. So now click on that device that we just created, and on the right side you need to click on live CD or DVD. So check that button and click on OK. Now we have everything set up. Now what we need to do is to turn on the virtual machine and go ahead with the installation of the operating system. Now double click on the virtual machine and the virtual machine window will open in front of you. Just wait a few minutes and you will notice that the virtual machine directly boots into the desired operating system. But if that does not happen and you are getting a message like no bootable media is found, Then what you can do is click on devices and then click on optical drives. Now you need to make sure that the operating system that you are trying to install is selected. If there is no ISO selected, then click on the ISO that you are trying to install to select it, and then click on machine and then click on reset to restart the virtual machine. Now your virtual machine will boot into the desired operating system. Now from here everything will happen according to the operating system that you are installing. So if you are installing Linux, then it will boot up into live CD or live OS. But if you are trying to install Windows, then it will guide you through the installation process of Windows. If you are going to install Ubuntu or any other distro of Linux, then you can continue watching this video because I'll be going to install it completely on virtual machine. Once you have your virtual machine started, it will take some time to load up the operating system. And once it is loaded, it will prompt you with this particular thing. Now from here you can either try Ubuntu or try Linux without installing it, or you can directly install it by clicking on install button. So I'll be going to install it, so I'll click on install, and after a few seconds I'll be prompted to set up the keyboard layout. So you can choose the language for your keyboard. So I'll choose English US and click on continue. Now here you can choose the type of installation you want for Ubuntu. So with normal installation, Ubuntu will install each and everything and each and every application. With minimal installation, Ubuntu will install just the required applications like the web browser and the basic utilities. You can choose to install the third-party drivers for your Wi-Fi and your graphics card and other things by selecting the third option, but it is not required because VirtualBox has everything set up for the virtual machine, so we can leave the third option as it is. So I'll choose to normally install Ubuntu and then click on next. Now here we will be prompted the type of operation we want to do. So the first one is erase disk and install Ubuntu. So we don't have anything in our disk and it is empty. So I'll choose the first option and then I'll click on install now. Click on continue. Now you have to select the country where you are. So I'll choose India and click on continue. It will take some time and then it will prompt you to enter your details. So you need to enter your name. After you input the name, it will automatically pick up the desired computer name and a username. But if you want, then you can choose to change those. After you have decided the computer's name, pick up a username according to you and choose some password because this will be required when you want to log in into your virtual machine. So choose some desired password and then click on continue. Now after some time, the installation of Ubuntu will start. If you are connected to internet, it will start to download some language packs. So you can disconnect the internet if you don't want to waste your data and let Ubuntu finish the installation. It will take some time and then when everything is finished, it will be prompting you to restart the system. So click on restart now button. Now your virtual machine will restart. After restarting, it may happen that it asks you to remove the installation medium. So for that you can go to devices and then optical drives and then deselect the ISO file that is selected and then press enter on your keyboard. But if this doesn't occur, as in my case, then you can remove the ISO file after Ubuntu is installed. So I'll show you how to remove the ISO file once my virtual machine completely boots up. As my virtual machine has booted up, I have to remove the ISO file from it. If you have previously removed it, then it's okay. But if not, then you can remove it now. So for that, click on devices and then optical drives. Then click on the highlighted ISO file so that it is disconnected from the virtual machine. Now we can log into our Ubuntu machine So click on the username and enter your password to sign into it. So now click on next and then again click on next, and then you can choose to send data to Canonical. So I'll choose no and then click on next and then click on done. Now you'll be on the desktop of Ubuntu or any other Linux distro that you are wishing to install. So we have successfully created a virtual machine in VirtualBox with Linux, or you can say Ubuntu operating system running onto it. Now you can do your work, and when you want to shut down your virtual machine, then you can shut it down from within Linux, or you can directly close this virtual machine window. It is recommended to close the virtual machine from within the operating system itself, but if your virtual machine freezes, then you can directly close the virtual machine window and it will close the operating system. So in this video we learned how to create a virtual machine on VirtualBox and install a guest operating system onto it. So this was all for this video. If you want me to show the installation of some other operating system, then you can comment them down. I'll try to make up a video on that and then post it on my channel. If you are benefited from this video, please don't forget to like it, and if you are new to this channel, please subscribe it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.